Hello, I am your teacher, Mr. Pacitti, and this is Jack's classroom here in Cincinnati, Ohio. So put away your mobile phones, put away your brand splits. What's the point? It's time to concentrate, it's time to study. This is Raw is War, and this is Graded. We kick things off with Mr. McMahon, who says that this is going to be an episode of Raw that none of us will ever forget because it's starting off with him, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. It's Roman Reigns. I know what you're thinking, Adam, he's a SmackDown Live superstar. That airs on Tuesday evenings. You're talking about a show that aired last night. Tuesday hasn't properly happened yet. Hold your horses. Roman says that Vince isn't the authority anymore. We, the WWE Universe, are. In which case, Roman, use your backstage standing to push for shorter episodes of Raw, healthcare for all performers, and an end to the Saudi Arabia shows. Cheers, mate. Roman says that if Vince isn't careful, he'll show up on every episode of Raw. Vince says, no, Roman, forget that. That'll cause anarchy. Cue Daniel Bryan's music, and I know what you're thinking. Wait a second, Adam, he's from SmackDown Live too. Bryan says that he's here for an intellectual conversation with Vinnie Mac. It's a new day. Yes, it is. Out comes Kofi Kingston, and I know what you're thinking. Kofi Kingston is a SmackDown Live superstar. What's he doing on the red brand? This is pandemonium. This is anarchy. This is an episode of Raw that I'll never, ever forget. Kofi says to Bryan, you didn't need to go to the McMahons. You should have just come straight to me. But Bryan says, hey, you're an undeserving champion. And then the two argue. And then Vince interrupts, saying he's had an epiphany. Vince introduces the wild card rule. The wild card rule is as follows. Any three SmackDown Live superstars can come over to Raw on a Monday night. Any three Monday Night Raw superstars can head over to Tuesday night SmackDown Live any week, up to three. There's no telling what could happen. There's more squabbling, then out comes Drew McIntyre, who runs down Roman. This leads to Vince McMahon setting up two WrestleMania rematches for later in the show. Drew McIntyre taking on Roman Reigns, and the WWE Champion Kofi Kingston defending that title against Daniel Bryan. But it's not over yet. Then out comes AJ Styles. He's from Monday Night Raw, in fairness. AJ says that it's quite convenient that Roman Reigns would come back to Raw just as he's about to challenge his best mate Seth Rollins for the Universal title. Cue Seth Rollins music. I'm exhausted by this. We're like 25 minutes in, by the way, including commercials. 25 minutes, and we've got here. AJ and Seth start arguing, and then Vince McMahon says, why don't we do this right here, right now? And they take their shirts off. We're going to get the match that we want to see. No, we're not. Vince sets up a tag team match. The team of Seth Rollins and AJ Styles, the original odd couple. How will they ever get along taking on the generic heel team of Bobby Lashley and Baron Corbin? But before we get to that match, let's group our thoughts together, shall we, class? That opening segment of Monday Night Raw is what us grown-ups would refer to as a clusterfuck. Right, I'm grading this on the basis of what the promo achieved, its fundamental goal, so excuse me if I don't praise the performances of Daniel Bryan or Drew McIntyre like I normally would. This is bollocks. It's obvious why the wildcard thing is happening. WWE's TV ratings are declining very, very rapidly. Fewer people are watching the show for long periods of time than they ever have done before, and that is a massive issue. So WWE think that by throwing lots and lots and lots of talent at each show, that's going to solve the problem. Spoiler, it won't. The issue with WWE programming, but more so Raw, isn't that we're not seeing the stars that we want to see, it's that stars aren't being properly built. Realistically, you've got tens of men and women on each brand that if they were built properly, they would be worth tuning in for. Andrade, Drew, Asuka, EC3, Gallows and Anderson, Rusev, Cesaro, the list goes on and on and on. The roster is more stacked with talent than it ever has been. But instead we get repetition, we get cookie cutter segments, we get lengthy, tedious promos like this one every single week. We get 50-50 booking, we get complete predictability, so why bother tuning in. As viewers, we are fed up of having our intelligence insulted week in, week out. The biggest problem that WWE has right now is a complete lack of characters. Characters who have a clear, defined motive. And if WWE don't care about their characters, then why should we? I could talk about this for about a day and a half, but now is not the time or the place. I've got other matches, other segments to grade. What WWE did last night was apply a quick fix, but one that doesn't solve the underlying problem. Based on what it achieved, this promo gets an F. Worse still, bringing the big stars out on each show actually means it's going to be harder for the undercard talent to get a chance to shine, meaning that it's going to be even more difficult to build new stars because we're just going to see more of Roman and AJ and Bryan and Kofi and... I said I'd stop. Let's move on. Let's get on with the match. It's a tag match. Yeah. I'll keep this short because I've just blabbed on for about as long as the opening promo lasted. This one, as I say, was AJ Styles and Seth Rollins taking on Bobby Lashley and Baron Corbin. It was a decent enough match. The babyfaces worked together at the beginning of the match, but by the end, AJ had hit the forearm accidentally on Seth Rollins, walked up the ramp, allowing Baron Corbin to pick up the win for Team No Heat Heel. As I say, actually a pretty decent match. I've got no real issues here. I'm going to give it a B-, and there were some cool moments. I did like it when AJ and Seth were working together, hitting dual offense. That was great. It feels like we're inching closer and closer now to an AJ Styles heel turn, and that is something that I'm actually quite looking forward to if it happens. You can imagine Seth beating him at Money in the Bank and then AJ Styles beating him down after the match, which in fairness would give us a reason to have some more matches between AJ and Seth Rollins, which, considering the talent that those two guys have, that should be an amazing match, and I'd like to see more of it. That said that for Shinsuke and AJ, that went on. Doesn't matter. I'm going to be optimistic. I think a heel turn for AJ Styles at this point would be a good thing. I'm not saying he's boring by any means, but it would keep him interesting. I'm all for it. Next up, out comes the critic of the critics, Sami Zayn, who asks us, what have we got to complain about tonight? You've got Roman Reigns over from SmackDown. You've got 2 WrestleMania rematches. Well, Sami, if you take a look at the first 5 minutes of Graded, I do have a few issues, actually. Sami is soon interrupted by Braun Strowman, and then Braun chases him all over the place. We go backstage. Braun has chased him all the way to the back, where he hoists him up, puts him in a garbage truck, and the truck drives up and I assume crushes him to death. Oh. I'm going to give this segment a B. It worries me a little bit that Sami's first feud after returning is with Braun Strowman, simply because I don't think that can end especially well for Sami. But I found this segment entertaining, and I'm willing to give this a chance. There are reports that Braun's in the doghouse for botching the end of the armbar at WrestleMania, so maybe, just maybe, Sami will come out of this one on top and ascend the card like he should. Just don't get your hopes up. Next up, the Lucha House Party are in a squash match. But, hold up, stick with me here. The Lucha House Party are the ones doing the squashing. Really? All 3 guys hit lots of flippy-doos, they nail their finishers, 1, 2, 3, and that is it. I didn't even mention who they were wrestling, because I don't know. This was just weird and gets a D+. The Lucha House Party have essentially been enhancement talent for quite a long time now, so this whole thing was just perplexing. It felt like a dream. Does this mean that there's a push in store for them? They're 3 talented wrestlers, that's for sure, but to me this felt like, hey, we should probably give the Lucha House Party a win, right? Who could they beat on the Raw roster? Better call the local training school. Next up is Ricochet versus Robert Roode, and if Ricochet loses this one, he loses his spot in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. I like it when they do stuff like this because it actually means that it feels like the matches are worth watching, which makes a change. Unfortunately, this one only gets a C. Essentially, it wasn't as good as their match a couple of weeks ago, and I think more importantly, it really felt like they were ready to invest in heel Robert Roode. It's a great character, and his win over Ricochet, considering Ricochet's standing in the company as somebody that obviously WWE are going to get behind, it felt like a big deal. And all of that work has been undone with this one match. He wasn't on Raw last week. Robert Roode was... I mean, Ricochet beating Robert Roode is fine, because Ricochet is a tremendous wrestler, but it just feels like, once again, an example of WWE really failing to pull the trigger on something and just go with it. And Robert Roode beating Ricochet and taking Ricochet out of a ladder match of all matches would have garnered him big heat, but they didn't want to do it. It feels like WWE is so afraid of people just being super grumpy because they lose all the time. They have to throw them wins. Nobody can just lose and lose. I'm blabbing on here, but I actually think this was a bit of an opportunity to get Robert Roode into that match, get him some heat, invest in his heel character, and then maybe have Ricochet come out, take him out of the ladder match, do some magnificent flip, give the crowd something really exciting, but still build to another feud. Doesn't matter, let's move on again. Backstage now, and Samoa Joe is stalking Rey Mysterio's son Dominic. As Dominic walks away to get Rey a bottle of water or something like that, Samoa Joe just tails him very, very slowly behind. This lasted about 30 seconds, but I thought it was so effective. Thumbs up from me. But then when we come back from the break, instead of Dominic just being found unconscious on the floor or locked in the Coquina clutch, instead, Samoa Joe just verbally berates him for a bit. And it was a good promo because Samoa Joe is a good promo, but after you tease something before the break, which is really intriguing, and then we stay tuned and we get there and he just shouts at him a bit underwhelming. Thumbs down. Next up is Lacey Evans taking on Allie Catrina, enhancement talent, and Lacey Evans has invited all of the Raw Women's Money in the Bank ladder match participants to watch on, not the SmackDown ones, because we've already got 3 wild cards on this show. Isn't this going to be fun? She invites them to watch on as she absolutely demolishes the jobber. Lacey wins the match in super quick fashion, and I'm going to give this a B+. Despite the fact that it was a squash match and didn't last very long at all, I think WWE have done a really good job of establishing the women's right as a finisher that can be hit out of nowhere and end a match instantly. After the match, Lacey Evans trash talks the women on the ramp as well as Becky Lynch herself. Becky Lynch then runs down, attacks, but Lacey manages to get away. This was all effective for me. Worked. Next up, it's the Viking Raiders, not even going to make a joke, taking on the Raw Tag Champs Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins in a non-title match. It gets to see it's just a match really. The Viking Raiders picking up the win with their tag team finisher, the Viking Experience. Of course, because Vince couldn't let that one go. And consider this one step closer to the Viking Raiders picking up those tag team titles, which I think is going to happen sooner rather than later. Another new Bray Wyatt vignette now, and this time Mercy is hiding something in his box. What's in your box, Mercy? Tell us what's in your box, you bastard. It's Rambling Rabbit, and he's absolutely torn it apart. Yowie wowie. Felt creepy saying that. Bray then puts on some Elvis specs and just go and watch it. It's worth watching. It's 2 minutes of your time. I think it's fair to say that all of us now are clamoring for the in-ring return of Bray Wyatt just to see what this new character is capable of. And I think it's an example of one of those things where it teaches us that we've got to give things a little bit of time. Just let things play out, because at the beginning, all of us were mocking those vignettes where Mercy would come out and do that and cough and that would be it. We were all laughing at that, but Firefly Funhouse is probably my favourite part of Raw each and every week now, and it's a shame that it's only 2 minutes on a 180-minute show, but you get my point. I can't wait for Bray Wyatt to return, essentially. Is it going to be a gimmick where he can get to main event level? Maybe, maybe not. But it's an interesting character, and it's one that's fun to watch, and it's one that I think will make people tune in. Next up, it's the first of our WrestleMania rematches featuring that wild card, Roman Reigns. And to be honest, I didn't really care about Roman versus Drew at WrestleMania that much anyway, so it's difficult to care about this one. If there's one match from WrestleMania that I didn't really want to see again, it would be Kurt Angle versus Baron Corbin, but you get what I'm saying. Not a bad match, but let's just skip to the ending. Roman Reigns hits the spear, goes for the cover, but in comes Shane McMahon and Elias. Wait a second. That's too many SmackDown wildcards. Cancel the wildcard thing. It was fun while it lasted, but it's not worked out. People have broken the rules, and rules are fun. Never mind. They run in, DQ. Miz then runs out, chases Shane with a steel chair out of the arena. Back in the ring, Elias and Drew McIntyre kill Roman Reigns, not literally, and it was all just a little bit much. Like, why is Shane feuding with so many people? Why is he feuding with Roman when he's still got unfinished business and a match coming up against The Miz? Why does Shane have to be on all of the shows? I'm trying to find the positive here, but it's becoming increasingly difficult. It's exhausting. And the match was fine. The finish wasn't fine. I'll give it a D+. You know what was good, thinking about it? After the match, when Miz is chasing Shane with a steel chair and Shane is desperately trying to get in the limo and get away and Miz is swinging at him. That was good. That was intense. It's just a shame that the previous 20 minutes had to happen so we could get there. Whatever. That was good. Yeah, I'll up it. C-. Next up, following all of that back-shaving hilarity on last week's show, we've got the Good Brothers taking on the Revival, except we don't get the match because more #comedy is in store. So the Usos come out on the ramp and reveal that they have put a tub of Ucey Hot down the pants of both members of the Revival. And it should activate in 3, 2, 1, now. Cue Scott and Dash going, oh, it's really hot. It's down my pants. It's burning my knob. Oh my God. Oh, we need some water. So they go up and they go to the Usos who have offered them some water and they put water down their bollocks. And that just makes things worse. Oh, that is bollocks. Screw this. It's not even the fact that you've got two of the most talented tag teams on the roster, not even just on the roster, in the world, feuding over back shaving and deep heat. It's the fact that none of this is funny or entertaining to begin with. It's just rubbish. Part of me thinks, hey, maybe this is just for the kids, but I don't think it is. I'm fed up my whole life, and probably yours too. You've been made fun of for liking wrestling. People say that wrestling is a lower form of entertainment than everything else. Well, if they tune in and this happens to be on TV, I can completely understand why they say that. It's crap. It's poorly written. It's not funny. It probably comes directly from Vince McMahon's mind. It's just F. Have an F- because this is wank. Too short to grade, but No Way Jose comes out next, and then he is destroyed, as well as all of his rosebuds, by Lars Sullivan. Not really much else to say here. Lars goes and looks at Vince McMahon afterwards, but it does pose the question, if Lars's gimmick is Legend Killer 2.0, then does that put No Way Jose on the same level as like Rey Mysterio and Jeff Hardy and main event time! It's the second of our WrestleMania rematches. Wildcard 1 taking on the WWE Champion, Wildcard 2. This was a superb match. Obviously, it didn't have all of the hype or the big match feel of the WrestleMania 35 match, but it still managed to feel important, and these two guys have just such tremendous chemistry. They're very, very fun to watch when they're wrestling each other, and I guess also, because we didn't know where Daniel Bryan was at health-wise, it was just nice to see him back. WWE kept their cards very close to their chest, and there was talk that Daniel Bryan might not be coming back anytime soon, so it was good to see him back in a ring. This one gets an A-, a nice combination of submission wrestling, technical wrestling, bit of high flying, and honestly, this match saved the show for me. Ignore the fact that this shouldn't have happened on Raw at all. I'm glad that this feud got the closure that WWE seemed to think it needed, and it means that Kofi Kingston is now able to focus his energy on Kevin Owens, and hopefully there's a big feud in the pipeline for Daniel Bryan, who is doing some of the best work of his career right now. He's so entertaining to watch, and hopefully he's featured prominently on whichever show he decides to pop up on. He's such a wild card. Overall, I'm giving this episode of Raw a D-. As usual, the good was far outweighed by the bad, and as usual, that absolutely was not the fault of the performers. And I'm fed up of talking about Raw right now. I'm going to go and do SEO or VAT returns or anything to stop me thinking about this show. Skipping the joke this week for an interesting fact that I only just learned. We all know that Buddy Murphy has a finisher called Murphy's Law, but did you know that Michael Cole has a finisher of his own called Cole's Law? And if you've never seen Cole's Law, it's got cabbage and it's got carrots and it's... I can't wait for Jack to come back. I just want to talk about SmackDown. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. You can follow us on Twitter @Cultaholic. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.